The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
Welcome to On the Mat. I am Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, joined by my own personal Merle Haggard. Andy Hamilton of TrackWrestling.com. You're not the Okie from Muskogee, but you might be the, Wonder from Williams, Iowa. You like the alliteration there?
I didn't know where you were going with that. I didn't know where you were going with the Merle Haggard thing, but...
You like him, though. That's kind of why I went there. I like him, too. I really listened to him in high school a lot. I think you're still having him on your playlist.
I've got some of the old country on there. Country Gold,
who
Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings.
Are those your guys that you go with majority of the time?
I wouldn't say the majority of the time. I'm more of a here and now type of guy, but every now and then, I'll hit a playlist that
old school
Don Williams.
Yeah. Do you like the intro music at the NCAA championships? Because I do. I think it's fantastic. I think it gives a lot of identity to these guys. I think it's something gets people talking about, too. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good
Was
concept.
it Zane? Zane came out to Johnny Cash, right?
I think he did, yeah. And then the big talk was Spencer Lee coming out to Pokemon.
What would be your walkout, Kyle?
Oh. Tangled Up in Blue, Bob Dylan.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'd go with that. I would... There might be something a little snappier that I could go with that would be more cliche, but I'd want something like that. It would be maybe Forever Young by Bob Dylan. Maybe a Bob Dylan song. How about you? Do you have something in mind that would be your
I don't know.
entrance?
I like Thunderstruck always gets the juices flowing a little bit. Right?
Yeah, it's a good song, man. I could see that for you coming out to that. Would you go running out to the mat or walking? Would you just kind of...
I don't know.
Just give a... Hey, I'm just here.
Sauntering,
baby.
probably, right?
I'm here. Yeah. And that's changed, too. I mean,
you'd be a stare-down guy, right?
Is there any stare-down guys?
I don't know. I don't really think so anymore.
Well,
I think that's Ramos's deal, right?
He did do the stare-down. You got me on that. He was.
But I mean, that's
him.
Guy. Like he's kind of copyrighted that, I feel.
There's no one else that's done that, is there?
You remember the year that Ramos and, was it David Thorne? and NCAA, they stood out there for probably 5 minutes straight, like staring at each other.
I do not remember this.
I think it was 2011 on the backside in Philly. Maybe not. I could be mistaken. I could have my years mixed up. But there was a match, a Ramos Thorne match, where for whatever reason it didn't get started on time. They got out there and there was something at the head table that was mixed up. And it took forever to get it sorted out. And Ramos and Thorne just stood there and stared at each other for like 5 minutes. It was hilarious.
What was the score? Do you remember I
don't even remember the score. I remember Ramos won. But I don't remember anything else about the match except the stare down. Let's see if we can dig this up.
I'd like
always dig this up thanks to the late, great Jay Hammond.
While we're talking about that, Andy Ramos is still a pretty hot topic. Going to go down to 57 kilos. I know you like the kilos. I like the pounds.
You're a pounds guy.
I like the 125 and a half. I guess you'd call it that. How do you think he'll do? What do you think he can do down at the lower weight? Didn't do as much at 134 or what, 59? Is it 61 kilos?
61. You gotta get your kilos right.
Yeah. 61 kilos.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, he had this era of invincibility to him, right, for a couple years there in the United States. And, I think he's got to maybe regain his place. It's he's certainly a guy that's hard to score on. Certainly a guy that's going to push the pace a little bit and physical, and reshots are always on point with Tony Ramos, guy that you better be crisp and clean when you attack him. I'm intrigued to see. 57 is going to be a lot of fun, right? I mean, with Gilman sitting in the driver's seat after winning, claiming the world silver last year, but you got Ramos and got some other guys that have been on the circuit for a while, and then some young bucks coming up too. I mean, potentially Dayton Fix Spencer Lee in that weight class as well. And, man, it's, we've talked about this before, but just looking at the future and some of these battles that are soon to happen, with guys coming up the age division ranks, 2020 is going to be a lot of fun to see what some of these weight classes and what these battles look like.
And when you look at these battles and you think how many good guys there are, there's going to be guys, especially at the college level, that might not even have a sniff of the podium for a little while, and they're quality guys. And that's the era we're in, that getting that top 8 is as tough as it's ever been, because you think about the depth, and you think about some of these weight classes we went through even earlier in the year. You think about 141, and then here comes a true freshman out on top. And that's pretty special to think about, that we're in that era where it gets you up in the morning. You get excited about it when you get to talk about the World Cup and all these guys that are competing against each other and who's going to win. And you think about the possibility of a Dayton Fix against a Spencer Lee, no matter what style. That's going to be a lot of fun. And there's going to be a guy that's going to be on the outside looking in. And that's with other weight classes too. I love Kyvan Gadsden. How is he going to break through at that weight class and beat Kyle Snyder? It's a tough task. And so with our country, the way it's set up, it's the number one guy. That's the guy you focus on. And I know that we understand there's a ladder, but there's 10 guys that are your superstars right now. And if you're number 2, you're not the star. I think David Taylor and Kyle Dake were they were stars, even though they haven't made a world team yet, just because their drawing power. But for the most part, you got to make a world team to make a difference at that elite level.
Well, and if you do make a world team, you're in contention, right, to probably be in the mix to win a world title. I mean, look at all the guys that made the team last year. I mean, Gilman in the world finals. Stieber didn't medal, but he was a world champ the year before. Zane, I think, is going to win some world medals before his time is up. Green was in the world finals. Burroughs, 5-time world and Olympic champ. Just go on down the line. Jaden now, twice out on the world scene and 2 world bronze, Olympic bronze. Snyder, 3-time world and Olympic champ. Gwiazdowski, world bronze medalist. So right there, I mean, those guys that wrestled in Paris a year ago, and then you throw in Dake and Taylor and, also, bunch of guys at 79 kilos, Deringer, potentially Mark Hall, potentially Zahid Valencia, on down the line. There's some firepower at that weight class too. So I think, it's to the point now, you make the team, you're probably going to be in the mix to win a world championship. And
it makes me smile when you go through that, because you don't even get to some of the junior guys. And that's what I'm wondering is, of that junior crop, who's the guy that you think has the most upside to make it to the next level? Because we have that good crew, and everyone talks about the next phase. Who's that guy? Is it Spencer Lee? Is it Gable Stevenson? Is it Dayton Fix? Who's the guy that probably has the next logical step at the senior level?
All of the above.
Yeah. I'd say Gable Stevenson, but
right?
That'd be my guy. But
Mark Hall's got a pretty brave freestyle career, I think. I mean, Zahid, was in the junior world finals last year. I'm with you with Gable. I mean, the guy goes through junior worlds last year, wrestling up in age division. He was a cadet age, and he wrestles juniors and goes through it and outscores his opponents, 61-11. Absolutely unheard of. They tried to keep him out. There were people that were trying to keep him out of the tournament because he was too young. And then he
really, I didn't know this storyline.
Oh yeah. In Finland last year, they weren't going to let him weigh in. There was a little bit of a fiasco, trying to get all the certification that he needed, for them to let him weigh in. Other countries trying to keep him out, and he, at the last minute, they let him weigh in. He goes on and then absolutely demolishes his bracket. And it's what he did a year ago up there was unbelievable. And it's, there's not 1 or 2 guys that we're talking about here in that conversation at the junior level or guys that were junior age a year ago. It's 5, 6, 7, 8 potentially. Hey, real quick to rewind, it was 2012. Okay, I was right. Yeah. Or 2011, excuse me, in Philly. Ramos, David Thorne. Ramos won 7-5 in OT.
Okay.
I need to find that match some way, somehow. We need to find that match. Hopefully somebody's got it on video, and hopefully somebody has the entire stare down.
I'd love that. I love those little nuggets like that you remember that and can bring it out, because that's what he was known for. He had that stare down, and something that is quintessential Tony Ramos. Coaching carousel keeps going round and round. West Virginia picked up a new head wrestling coach. We're going to have one of the new head wrestling coaches at South Dakota State, Damion Hahn, on our program. But as you look at what's happening right now Edinboro has a vacancy, but West Virginia has a new coach. Wisconsin has a new coach. South Dakota State. This is a fun time, because coaching changes are always fun, because you get to think about what the future might look like, what the coaches bring as far as personality, because right now you kind of have a musical chairs, because Bono goes somewhere, you have to fill in there. And unless it's an assistant coach, with the case of South Dakota State, you're going to have coaching vacancies, and now Edinboro has one. I have no idea who it would be at Edinboro at this point. Indiana, they filled in with someone who was already there, but Edinboro, I'd have no clue who would be interested, who's going to be there.
Yeah, I wonder, you start looking at some people that have connections there, and you wonder, a guy like Alex Clemson, potentially, Cliff Moore. Maybe those are a couple names that come to mind immediately. But we'll see. It's to your point, though. I mean, it is a lot of fun, right? I mean, you think back 15 years ago, and there was hardly any movement in the college wrestling world. I mean, it was pretty static year to year. And it used to be that, if you were in a non-revenue sport, kind of the mantra was, it seemed, at least, keep your kids out of trouble, make sure they graduate, don't embarrass the athletic department, don't run into any NCAA sanctions, and you can pretty much stay however long you want, right? I mean, that's kind of the way it used to seem. And now you're seeing where athletic departments are making changes based off performance, not just other stuff involved. And I think that's creating, fresh ideas. It's creating competitiveness. It's keeping people on their toes, keeping people motivated. It's, maybe one of the reasons why we're seeing attendance is on the rise across the country. One of the reasons why we're seeing, programs like South Dakota State, for instance. We're going to talk to Damion Hahn, but the job that Chris Bono and John Reeder and company did up there was phenomenal. And they took a program that had won 7 dual meets in 3 years prior to their arrival. In the last 3 years they were there, they won 14 each of those 3 years. Now they're they made South Dakota State an appealing job, a job that was appealing enough for Damion Hahn, one of the top assistants in the country, who spent 12 years at Cornell. That was appealing enough for him to go across the country to South Dakota State. So
it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're saying there, you just wow, that is true, because Damion Hahn's a guy that gets you excited. And when you think about him being at South Dakota State, that's really putting them on the map again. It says, hey, Chris Bono goes to Wisconsin, but I don't think you lose anything with having Damion Hahn, and I know he wants to take it to an even higher level. I think he has the tools to do it, not only as a coach, but also right now with the infrastructure, with Seth Gross coming back, some good recruits. He's close to where he went to college. I think there's some good things in the mix for Damion Hahn. And boy, when they announced his hire, I was excited about him being the head man there, being in the Big 12. There's just a lot of good things going on right now for not only South Dakota State, but just with the coaching in general. Yeah,
and one of the first things that I thought of when his name was involved was the connection to Jared Lawrence at Pinnacle, and teammates at Minnesota, and Lawrence and Brandon Paulson have turned Pinnacle Wrestling Club into one of the elite clubs in the country, and two of the top wrestlers out of that club, Peyton Robb, Alex Lloyd, two of the top high school wrestlers in the country, had signed with South Dakota State under Chris Bono and John Reeder, and you maintain that connection, that tie to South Dakota State or tie to Pinnacle with Damion Hahn going to South Dakota State. And that's a club and a connection he can draw from for many years to come, I think. And that gives, South Dakota State a little bit of a head start, in my opinion, rather than, somebody coming in from cross country and no ties to the area whatsoever.
Across the nation, even guys that haven't been hired in the last year, just in this cycle, but we've talked to Troy Steiner at Fresno State. I don't know if you saw the attendance figures, but what were they, number 4 on the overall attendance for average? I think they were high, and that says a lot about bringing those programs back and what it says about the administrative support, and that it's worth bringing those programs back. I was surprised by those numbers. I think Troy even said that when we talked to him, but until you saw it on paper and that it was real, it was fantastic to see that type of support. And Troy Steiner's a guy that gets you excited. There's just a lot of coaches right now that when you look across the arena at the NCAA championships, you just say these guys are leading the sport and you feel good about it. It's a good feeling to have right now for D1.
Yeah. Yeah. And it shows that it can be done at places, right? I mean, and you talk about Fresno State. I mean, look at all the talent right in and around Fresno right there, where that thing's set up, for a lot of, there are a lot of things in place of what you want to build a program. And so, it's not like you're coming and you're, chipping away year after year after year after year to try to just make incremental gains. I mean, they're hitting the ground running there. And so, what will we get out of Little Rock in year one? What kind of, enthusiasm do they have drummed up there, for wrestling? Wrestling's growing rapidly down there. And they're sinking a lot of resources into it from the beginning. So what will they do in year one? What will their attendance be in year one? I think they're going to be hard pressed to get where Fresno State was in year one, but certainly that's a program that over the course of the next couple months, as they move closer to hiring a head coach, it's going to be interesting to follow that situation and see what kind of resources in terms of facilities. They've talked about making a big time commitment to facilities there as well. So, that's exciting. Can we see, some more momentum across the country? Will Idaho wind up with a Division I program again here in the next 10 years? Will it be Boise? Will it be somebody else? Will there be another program out west popping up somewhere in the Pacific Northwest where we, desperately need some more programs to, cut down on, one of the things that's really a challenge. Oregon State, they're out there on an island by themselves, getting teams to come in, and, it would be nice to have a partner program out there, so to speak. So when a school travels out to duel Oregon State, they can at least get 2 duels in a weekend, rather than, having to fly, a couple hours to the next closest program, which I think is Stanford. So, yeah, there are a lot of positives going on right now, and Fresno State's certainly near the top of the list.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up Little Rock, because that was the program I kept thinking about for a long time. Who am I missing? That there's a coaching vacancy, and I'm really excited to see who's going to get hired there. I'm fascinated by what that hire is going to look like. Just like with Presbyterian, I thought Mark Cody was a good fit for that, but Little Rock, it's such a unique situation that I don't know where they are in the hiring process. I don't know what they're thinking, but to know who that coach is going to be and what their fit's going to be, I can't wait to see who they pick. I know that we've thrown around Pat Smith. I don't know if he necessarily wants to be that guy and take on that head coaching stress, but he's a name that would be logical to me.
Well, let's get Chase Conk, the AD, on sometime.
That'd be fun.
Let's get him on. Let's talk to him about Little Rock wrestling.
I would love that. See what he's thinking and talk that through.
He had a chance to go to the NCAA championships for the first time. He was out in Cleveland when they made the announcement. I'd be curious just to hear his thoughts on.
I would too.
What he thought sitting in there in a sold out arena, and the finals were bonkers. So much fun. Team race up in the air until the second to last match there. Third to last match, I guess.
But then how you build a fan base? How do you start from scratch and say now you're part of the brand of Little Rock Wrestling because you don't have any wrestling alumni necessarily to build off of? It's all from scratch. How do you build fans that want to wear Little Rock Wrestling shirts and get people to want to support it? So all of those things would be fun to talk through. So I like that conceptually. Hey, we've talked about this too as we move into the international season. It's so much fun to recognize and appreciate that we really are in quite possibly the best times for the sport. I know that we've seen some dark days, and there's times, admittedly, that I shook my head at the sport and wondered, hey, what are we doing here? And I feel like we're past that right now. I think we have a pretty good brand on the collegiate style. I think we have a really good brand on international style. There's some things that disappoint me with the collegiate style that I think need to really get cleaned up. But overall, I think it's moving in the right direction and we're making progress. And I think people care about the product. And I'm just excited to see what this is going to continue to do. I think it could build, and I hope we're just on the starting end of this. I hope it's not going to end and that we have a good 20-year run and hopefully forever, but hopefully it ebbs and flows in the right direction instead of the wrong direction.
Yeah, and I think we made improvements in the last 4 or 5 years. Remember like 4 or 5 years ago when we saw so many 3-2, 2-1, low scoring matches, not a lot happening. I think, we're maybe past that a little bit. And, there's some rules in place that have increased the action. I'm not sure that they have necessarily made the sport more viewer friendly for the casual fan. I think we've made the rule book pretty complex in some ways. I think the edge of the mat rule, there's just so much ambiguity there. And was it the guy backing out of bounds? Was he getting pushed out of bounds? Who's the stalling on? Is it action? I don't know. I'd just like to see us get away from that and go to a straight up push out. I think that would simplify things. It would make the wrestling better. I think there, in some ways we've increased action and also increased the complexity and made it harder to follow for somebody just flipping through the stations and seeing wrestling on TV and, wondering, why did they call this? Why did they call it this way? Why did they call it that way? Because, I talk to wrestling people that don't even understand why some of the rules are called the way they are, but at least it's entertaining, right?
Yeah, that's the best part about it, is that we have people that are identifiable. We have good diversity. We have people from a lot of different programs representing the United States in a variety of ways. I just think it's a really healthy time for the sport. And when you're a part of it, you want to embrace it and be excited about it because, hey, your energy level goes up when we get to be excited. It's good. You feel like this is all positive and you want to get behind it. And there were, like I said, that 2013 era where it was just the ball pull, we've talked about it numerous times, but there was a collegiate era where those final matches, you just get done and it's just, oh, the semifinals were so much better. You were always saying that, or the quarterfinals, and the finals were just a letdown because they were those 3-2 variety and it was awful. Just awful. And now we get matches where you leave and you're buzzing. You get a standing ovation for that scramble at 174 between Hall and Valencia, and you love it. I think there's more of that to come.
Yeah. I think so too. And you wonder, is it because of the rules, or is it because we've got higher level wrestling now, higher level wrestlers coming through the pipeline? Yeah. I think that's part of it too, right? I
think you brought that up, and I think you're right in bringing that point, is I think the higher level wrestlers are taking us to that level that they have to have the mentality. It can't just be the rules are in place and it's just going to be automatic. It's got to be the wrestlers to implement that and want to be aggressive and go to that higher standard. So I think you're right on that. I think it's that higher level.
More examples too. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's examples for the younger kids when guys like, David Taylor come along and, he's running through the NCAAs one year where he pinned everybody except for the finals where he got a tech, I think. I mean, when you have examples like that for younger guys to look up to, and it's, you see guys that are putting a lot of points on the board, pinning people, not trying to win 3-2. I think that's a good example. And I think we have more examples like that now.
We are going to bring in our guest, two-time NCAA wrestling champion for Minnesota, four-time All-American, part of that historic team in 2001 for Minnesota, 10 All-Americans. He was an All-American at 184 that year. He was at Cornell as an assistant coach, and now he has his first head wrestling coaching position at South Dakota State University. Damion Hahn, welcome to the program, and congratulations.
Hey, thanks, guys. I greatly appreciate it. Getting me on the air with you today.
When you get that job, when you finally are told you have the job, what happens that next 24 hours?
Well, when I sat down with Justin Sell, our athletic director here at South Dakota State, and then went through the process. We came to some agreement on some things, and I told him, hey, I'm in, I'm taking it. That was over the weekend. The announcement didn't come out until Monday, and when I addressed my team and at Cornell, and literally the 24 hours from, I think the announcement went out at 4:00 Eastern time. 24 hours, literally. I didn't answer one text message because they just kept coming through, and I was taking phone calls, and I was calling recruits and parents. And so by the time I was ready to go to bed, that night, it was around midnight sometime, I was like, okay, I gotta get through some of these text messages. And I started out with 156 text messages, and I was just like blown away. I mean, and most of them weren't like this one word, hey, congratulations, you write back, thanks. So, I'm writing, getting through all them. And I got it down to, the low 50s. And the next day I pick up my phone and I'm back up to like 120. And it didn't stop, and it hasn't stopped. It's been very overwhelming in a phenomenal way. The support, the outpour of people that are not only involved in this program, this university, but just people throughout the country. I mean, it's been amazing, to say the least.
What did you say in your interview to get this? I'm assuming there was competition, but what do you think separated you from the other candidates? I just, when I sat down, with everybody here at South Dakota State, and I met almost the entire athletic staff, and I just kind of gave them a little bit about me and who I am, the type of person, what I've been able to accomplish at Cornell in my 12 years there. And, there was a lot of back and forth, some questions, and I gave them, my philosophy and what I look for in a student athlete. And, the wrestling part of it, they saw it on paper. I guess you could say that speaks for itself, and what we've been able to do. But, that's such a small part in some regard, because, you have so many other facets of your program to make it successful. And that's with, the support of the fan base that, we build and interact with, and we bring people in to our program, and get them vested into it. And so they feel the same struggles, they feel the same passion, the wins, the losses, and they really understand, what you're going through. And we've been able to do that at Cornell, and what Chris left behind is nothing short of great, with the fan support. And so and I was telling the committee, I said, I never, ever in my wildest dreams thought I would leave Cornell. I've been there 12 years. Both me and my wife work for Cornell. We have two kids that are going through the daycare system and everything. So I thought, that was it for me. And then an opportunity presented itself at South Dakota State, and I wanted to make, I was sitting down and I made comparisons, and, I made my pros and cons, and when it came down to it, and I was telling the committee, I said, there were so many similarities between Cornell and South Dakota State, and the success that we've had at Cornell. South Dakota State had all the intangibles to have the same success. And you can win at a lot of different places despite the support, your administration support. But when you have that, and that's what we had at Cornell, that's what they have here at South Dakota State, the sky's the limit.
when you have people that, support you in a way that, I would say 90% of the country does not have. And that for me was a major plus in the decision-making process for me. And then, you throw in Justin Sell, who, absolutely phenomenal athletic director. The first time talking to him on the phone, I got off the phone and my wife came in the room. She was like, "So how'd that go?" And I said, "He's awesome." Like, I actually felt like pumped up, after talking to him, and I can see why they, South Dakota State has had the success they've had because of his support. So, I related a lot of things back and forth, and, they obviously saw my resume and what I am able to do and bring to the table. And so it was, we were all on the same page, and I connected with some of the people here. So maybe that's the big reason why, they gave me the nod, and I couldn't be more excited. I'm absolutely thrilled.
South Dakota State is pretty close to the University of Minnesota where you competed. How are you going to tap into that pipeline of people, whether it's Marty Morgan or not necessarily Brandon Eggum because he's now your competition, but how do you tap into some of those guys that were your former coaches?
Well, wrestling in the Midwest, for the University of Minnesota, I built a good relationship with people, and I think anything in life, relationships matter. They can help you down the line. They can hurt you down the line. So I think keeping good relationships with, the people from this area was important. And also that was another reason about coming back here. One of my best friends, roommate, teammate in my wedding, Jared Lawrence, and he runs one of the most successful clubs in, not only Minnesota, but I would say the Midwest. And, having a good relationship with Jared, and, you have Chad Erickson has another club in the area. So, he was also my teammate. And so I got good relationships with a lot of people in the area. And I think just being able to plug into them and use them as, just say like an advocate or just being able to get in front of some of the best talent, not only the state of Minnesota has, but the region. And there's a lot of rich wrestling in this region of the country, and I think that having those previous relationships are going to help with the recruiting process. And right now, South Dakota State finished 12th in the country. Absolutely awesome. So keeping that excitement, keeping the ball rolling, is absolutely huge. And I like it. I'm coming back to the Midwest, something that I'm familiar with. My wife is a Midwest girl. There was just so many great things to draw me back here. And it's not like I'm stepping into a part of the country where it's the unknown. I'm familiar with this, and I think that's going to help in the recruiting process and getting talent in our room.
Damion, you talk about your relationship with Jared Lawrence and recruiting. Chris Bono and John Reeder had a strong connection to the people at Pinnacle, and obviously their staff or their recruiting class last year was anchored by a couple Pinnacle guys. Alex Lloyd, Peyton Robb. Have you had any initial conversations with those guys? And if so, how strongly do you feel about your ability to keep them on board and keep them fired up about going to South Dakota State?
I've reached out to all of our commits, and just getting the process going. Talking to them and kind of introducing myself and letting them get to see a little bit of who I am and what I bring to the table. As of right now, everybody is still committed to come, and I still have to work through a couple of details with some of those guys, but everything is good right now. Everything is good, and I think having that relationship with Jared, and people do their research. I mean, I did my research on coming here and talking to different people outside of, the department and getting intel on, different guys and different people within the program. And having an advocate like Jared in the relationship that I've had, people do their research and, they've made the phone calls and, they've reached out to different people to find out, what type of person that I am. And, everything has been good. I'm actually going to be getting on the road here tomorrow to go see some of these kids and sit down with them and start to build that relationship that they built with the previous staff. And, anytime there's change, it could be a little uneasy for people, because they're coming for one thing and now all of a sudden that thing is not there anymore. So just trying to get through that transition period is important, and getting in front of some of these people is an absolute must to sit down with them and start to build that relationship, because we're a little behind the eight ball in some sense, because there has been, a whole year of recruiting that has been put into these guys from the previous staff. So I need to play some catch up, but I think we're on the right track right now.
South Dakota State had its first Division I NCAA wrestling champion in Seth Groves. How do you keep him checked in and engaged for his senior season now that you're the head wrestling coach?
I'll tell you this, when the transition started and the last staff moved on, everything that I've heard and I've seen since being here, Seth has stepped up. He has taken that leadership role, and he's kind of rallied the troops. And he basically said, guys, listen, I know a lot of people right now are lost and could be upset with what's going on, but we need to sit tight and go through this process. And he relied heavily on Justin, our AD, to make the decision of which direction we're going to go into. And he, Seth basically said, hey, look, guys, we're in good hands. We're in good hands. And since the announcement of me taking this position, I've communicated with Seth on numerous occasions, and he is bought in. He is, South Dakota State is him, and he wants to, do some phenomenal things. So Seth has been amazing through this process. I've got my hands on him a little bit yesterday, and he's a sponge. He wants to learn. He wants to get better. He's challenging himself, through this transition, and looking forward to next year going into the national tournament, or the season for that matter, as being, the best wrestler in the country and a Hodge contender. So I don't think his vision at all has changed. He's a very driven individual. So it's going to be fun having him, here. You're not stepping into a place where you don't have talent and you're not starting from scratch. So, he has already accepted that leadership role, and we're going to rely on Seth heavily, to not only be a voice of the program, but just to a role model that people can, look up to and say, you know what, I mean, we can do it here. We can do it at South Dakota State. We can be a perennial power. We can contend for trophies. So having Seth here has been great. I'm very excited about what the future holds.
How was your first week on Twitter?
Oh boy. Kind of like what I told you about the text messages and everything like that. It's been overwhelming. So I never had a personal Twitter account. We ran our staff at Cornell. We ran our Twitter account. We ran our social media as a staff. So I'm not unfamiliar with it, but I never had a personal one. So that night, I think it was last Monday, that night I sat down and I was like, all right, here we go. My wife has been on me and saying, you need to get yourself a personal Twitter account. And I told her, I said, listen, the day I become a head coach, I said, I'll get one. So that night I got on and signed up, got everything going. And my phone, I'm sitting on my phone and I didn't know how to shut my notifications off. So I'm sitting on my phone and ding, 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 ding. They just kept coming through. And I'm like, holy goodness, what did I do? And it's just been, again, overwhelming. The support, the tweets, the direct messages. I mean, they have been absolutely insane. And it's fun, being able to connect with, people personally on a different level that, wrestling is such a small world and we have such a tight knit community that, people love to see things happen. People want to be informed. And this is just another outlet to keep people informed, not only with me, but the program and moving forward. So it is, it's been crazy, absolutely crazy. And, but on the other hand, it's been fun. So I'm looking forward to, getting better and, learning more about, the social media world. And we have a phenomenal support staff here in regards to social media. And they have been tremendous with everything going into it. So I'm excited. It's definitely a lot of fun.
Damion, you mentioned some of the things that Chris and John did during their time there, and South Dakota State's been a rapidly rising program. What do you remember about South Dakota State wrestling from your time at Minnesota, if anything?
I'll be honest with you, not a lot. When I was in college, I think they were Division II at the time. So, they weren't, really heavily on our radar. And then, in the past 6 years, I've been at Cornell doing our thing there. Chris has kind of built this, machine that has kind of taken off. And when I talked to Justin the first time on the phone, I told him, I said, Justin, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I said, I don't know a lot about South Dakota State, except for they took 12th in the country this past year. They had their first national champion in Division I. So tell me, enlighten me, give me everything you know. And he did. And that's when I started putting, the pen to paper and started really, sitting down and making those comparisons. And I was like, it has the recipe for success. And in the past 6 years, the previous staff has been able to show that. And we just got to keep it going. We got to keep it going and build upon that. And I think it's something that we can do. We can absolutely do here, and we can take South Dakota State to the next level. That's why, I want the challenge, and I'm looking forward to doing that.
Chad Lamer was a 3-time Division II champion for South Dakota State. How do you make sure you lock down his sons to come to your program?
Yeah, I actually, I wrestled Chad a couple times. He was still, he's older than I am, but after I graduated, I was training and he was still competing. So we actually wrestled a couple times, went back and forth. And I actually, Chad reached out to me after the announcement came out and, congratulated me, and he's excited, that I'm coming to take over the helm. And we had a great conversation, and I told him, I was like, hey, man, we got to get your boys. We got to get your boys out here. I know he's got a slew of them, and we got to get him back into the fold, and hopefully we can do that by bringing his boys here.
When I think about recruiting as it is right now, and I think that's the big thing for any program is to get the right recruits. I go back to when you came to Minnesota, you were the hottest thing on the market, and you had one person that I can remember, and then you had a Steve Mocco, and then you might have one. Now there's probably 10 to 20 guys that are hot on the market. Well, why has that changed over the course of time? Why do you think we have so many great wrestlers to choose from?
I think, there's a lot of different factors. I would say kids nowadays are really starting to specialize more than they did in the past. In the past, you get kids playing 2-3 sports, and where that kind of took away from, the wrestling highlight, if you will. But nowadays, I think kids are starting younger. They're specializing more in a sport, wrestling specific. And then just, we just talked about social media. The coverage is like it's never been. I mean, like, something you've never ever seen, and there was none of that. You know, when I was coming through. I mean, I remember picking up, you know, for some of the kids today, it's like picking up a newspaper. They're like, huh? You know, picking up the newspaper, picking up, you know, a publication and going through, it might have been, you know, a week old, you know, a month old or whatever, and going through and saying, okay, you know, this guy beat this guy, you know, 2 weeks ago, and you're looking through the box scores. And nowadays, I mean, just with the social media coverage and everything online, you know, it's brought right to their fingertips. So I think there's so many resources out there, along with kids, you know, specializing in one sport, the outreach of social media, and you know what you know different companies have done with bringing wrestling to the forefront, where these guys have access to some of the best wrestling minds in the world, and it's right at their fingertips, where before that wasn't there. So you had what you had, you know, you worked through what you got, and it's just different now. I mean, the sport has in some way evolved in not just, you know, the wrestling per se, but it has evolved, you know, through the internet, has evolved through social media. I mean, so there's so many different, you know, there's so many resources that these kids have available to them, and they're using it. And, you know, there's, you know, all the national tournaments and different events that these guys are competing in. It's hard not to get better, and it's hard not to have, you know, 10 absolute studs coming out every year or more. So I just think, you know, as a wrestling community, you know, we have done a phenomenal job, you know, with all the resources that we have available to us to take our sport to the next level.
Did you know people were talking about you and you were the buzz coming out of high school? Because it reached across the country, and that's pre-social media. Did you know you were the next big thing? Everyone was talking about you?
I was pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, I didn't know a whole lot. I mean, you know, I wrestled, you know, through the youth ranks and, you know, through high school, and I went to events, but I literally knew nothing. I knew 2 programs. You know, I mean, I was pretty naive, I guess you could say, of wrestling out there on the collegiate level. Because, I mean, coming from New Jersey, you had Rutgers, you had Rider, you know, Division I, and, you know, they weren't the programs they are today. So, like, I never went to any college wrestling matches, you know, because, you know, I was wrestling myself. So I was pretty naive. I knew of 2 programs. I knew of Iowa and Oklahoma State. That was it. And when the recruiting process started and people were coming in and, you know, to get the phone calls and everything, I was just like, wow, you know, there's a lot more to this than I ever realized, you know. I mean, and some of the other people were probably a lot more fortunate than me, you know, because they lived in those parts of the country that wrestling was thriving at the collegiate level. I didn't know anything about it. You know, I was just like, hey, I had my goals. You know, I wanted to be a 4-time state champ. You know, I wanted to be a 4-time national champ. And, you know, so I didn't really realize how tight the wrestling community was until after I left high school and I got into college, and then it started to really open my eyes. And it was very, very eye-opening for me, you know, coming from the time when I was wrestling in high school to what it is now, or even when I was coming out. I mean, it was mind-blowing. So I knew I was okay. You know, I knew I was pretty good, and I knew I would have an opportunity, you know, to go on to college and wrestle. And I didn't know where, but going through the process, it really narrowed things down for me. And you know, I ended up going to Minnesota, and it was, looking back, a phenomenal decision, not on my part, but you know, this was a family decision. You know, my parents weren't going to let me make a bad one, and if I was going to make a bad one, you know, they were going to step in and be like, hey, listen, you know, you need to think about some of these things. So that's the beauty about I think wrestling, it's a family affair, and you have parents that are just absolutely vested into their children's success. That they want the best. They want the best for them, and I relied on them heavily through the process, and we ultimately ended up going to the University of Minnesota. So it was good. It was a lot of fun.
What led you to Minnesota?
What's that?
I said, what led you to Minnesota?
It was, coming from New Jersey, which is a good wrestling state. My high school, was not known for wrestling. They were, a basketball, football school, and the wrestling was kind of, I don't want to say subpar, but they were not at that level. And I remember, coming through, and we couldn't really fill a full team. I remember getting some of the people that got cut off the basketball team. They were some of our upper weight guys on the team, and so it wasn't some of these storied programs. And so when I was going through the recruiting process, I wanted to be part of a team. I wanted to be part of a team that had the same visions as me. They wanted to be All-Americans. They wanted to be national champions. And above everything, I wanted to win a team title. And, when I sat down and went through all the pros and cons, Minnesota and Jay Robinson, Marty Morgan, Mark Schwab, and Joe Russell, they were able to provide me with something that I didn't think any other program could. And I felt comfortable. I felt at home. And you're going to compete well. I feel you're going to do your best where you feel comfortable. You feel comfortable with the staff, the community, the guys on the team, and they had everything I was looking for. And so that's why, the University of Minnesota was the choice for me. Nothing against any other program that I looked at, but they checked all those boxes, and it was an easy transition, an easy process for me when it came down, to making that decision.
When you won your consolation match at the 2001 NCAA championships, you bent down and gave the nail in the coffin sign. Are you going to show your guys that move, how to do that?
One thing that I'm not really into myself too much. I'll tell you this: I would give every single thing that I've ever done in the sport of wrestling back for my guys to have success. And yeah, that kind of clip has been out there, and when I see it, I'm just like, oh God. I put my head down, and but at that time, the emotions were running wild, and we literally just locked up our first national title as the team, and it was the nail in the coffin, so to speak. But that clip gets brought out every now and then, and it's funny, it's funny, but it was an amazing time in my life. I got to share that with my team, my family, my friends, and it's something I'll never forget.
And when you look back, you were in that era where you were trying to break the stranglehold of the University of Iowa. You guys eventually did that. You guys won championships in 2001 and then 2002. But there was a lot of excitement with border brawls, and you guys brought in great crowds, and Jesse Ventura was coming to your dual meets and watching. You had the belt. Can you take some of that? Do you think you can bring that to South Dakota State, whether it's against Minnesota or Iowa? Can you get some of that back and really elevate the sport to get some big crowds at SDSU?
Oh, I absolutely believe it. Absolutely. I think you got to create rivalries. You got to give something to the fans that they can get behind. Everybody loves the national tournament, and it's an individual tournament, and how they do, judges the team ranks. But there's nothing like, a dual meet, where, the rest of the common wrestling fan or lack thereof a wrestling fan, it's hard to understand at times. We got rule changes, we got things happening within our sport that the normal sports fan, they'll sit there and be like, what the heck is this? What's going on? But that's why dual meets for me matter, because you're not just going there to see Seth Gross or another wrestler compete. I mean, you're going there to support your team. And when you have these events, Border Brawl or some of these other matches that you kind of promote, everybody matters. Not one guy. I mean, you're only as strong as your weakest link, and that's when you can feel the camaraderie. You can feel the bond that you have with the guys that are on your team, that they go through this on a daily basis with you. Those are important. Everybody loves. I said it before. Everybody loves the national championship. I mean, it is the greatest show on earth, but you gotta build those dual meets. They matter. They matter for your fans. They matter for the support of your program. And then when you have that going, those fans will come. Those fans will travel to that national tournament. It's hard when you go through a season, and whether you're losing or you only have a couple guys on the team that are any good. I mean, heck, even forfeiting. It's hard for your fans to get behind that. So that's why the team aspect is so important for the growth of our sport. So I'm a huge advocate of building some of those events. With North Dakota State, hopefully we can build that with Minnesota and Iowa. And so it is absolutely vital for the growth of wrestling at the collegiate level.
Damion, you talk about wanting to create some rivalries. You want to get any of those going today? You want to call in anybody out today?
Well, I think North Dakota State is that one there, and again, coming from out east, being at Cornell for a while, I don't know what is already established, but North Dakota State would be an absolute phenomenal one to really build around and create that excitement to bringing them to town, or when we travel there, it's an easy short trip, and I think our fans will get behind that. Generate that excitement, like, hey man, this is what matters. So I think obviously North Dakota State is going to be, I think, absolutely huge. And then you have your teams like Minnesota and Iowa, which, they have their own rivalries, but, I want to sneak in there and start to create something. And where, these couple duels, these 3 duels, 4 duels, with the bordering states, it is vital where, this is what people look forward to. Not everybody's going to be able to make it to the NCAA tournament for one reason or another, but they can get in their car and drive on up a couple hours and support their team, support what the process and what we have going on and what we're trying to build. So I referenced North Dakota State, and I think that's going to be a good one to really start to build that rivalry or that expectation of, hey man, let's rally behind our troops here, and branching out with Minnesota, Iowa State, that's going to come, but I think North Dakota State is kind of the big one right now.
God, I would think Northern Iowa. Justin Sell was an AD there. Doug Schwab was on the 01 team. You're both in conference. That seems like the natural fit there.
Yeah, no, that absolutely. That is definitely a good one. It's what Schwab has done there has been great, and I know they have an awesome following. Wrestling in that gym is everything that I've heard is kind of exciting. The fans know what they're talking about. They know what they're doing, and they get on opposing teams, and it's all good. It all creates excitement. It just builds and builds the collegiate sport. So Northern Iowa would be a great one. I can't believe I left them off the list, but yeah, that is another one that in conference bordering states, and the history that Justin has, leaving Northern Iowa. So Northern Iowa would be a good one.
You got a new catchphrase, or are you guys sticking with "get jacked"?
We're gonna keep that for now. I was sitting down with Cody earlier and talking about the phrase, but I mean, people relate to that. People understand it. It's something that has been used for a while, and I think it's kind of grown throughout the athletic department. And so, we're going to make some changes in regard to, the program and some of the training phases and stuff like that. But that is something that I think people can relate to. And so we'll keep that for now. And if we can, come up with something a little bit more exciting, a little bit better, then we'll move in that direction. But for now, people like it. I'm okay with it. And we're going to keep it going.
All right, Damion, you got to get us excited here. Who are your assistant coaches going to be?
So I've had this question asked to me every day now, and so right now I have Cody Caldwell on staff. He's stayed here from the last staff. I had a great conversation with him, and obviously I did my research, and everything that I've been able to gather on Cody, from the administration to the guys on the team, and the people within the region, I mean, absolutely phenomenal. There's nothing beneath him. He is a tireless worker, and the guys really respect him. So, I sat down with Justin and talked about Cody, and I brought Cody in, and we're going to keep Cody. We're going to keep Cody on staff, and he has been amazing through this transition process. I mean, he's helped me in more ways than I could have asked for. Just kind of rearing the ship while I'm not here. Handling some of the practices and dealing with some of the recruits and the alumni. And so he's been an absolute pleasure to have, and we're going to keep him here. And so right now I have 2 positions open to bring in, assistant coaches. And I have one guy that I've been in contact with for a long time, and I told him, I said, listen, man, when the day comes that I am called to lead my own program, I said, you're going to be my first call. And so we're working through that. I can't tell you who it is. I know you want to know, but I can't tell you who it is because he's got some obligations, and he's actually going to be meeting with, his people this week to kind of let them know what's going to be happening in the near future. But he is, when the announcement comes out, and that will be, hopefully soon, he's got to take care of some things on his end, but hopefully soon. And I think people will be excited with who I want to bring in, for that one position. And my vision, what I want to do is I want to surround myself with not only good people, but surround myself with people that I know what they bring to the table. And I know what this guy's about. I know everything about him. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better human being to be a mentor to the guys on our team here, and bringing in recruits and being able to work with some of these guys. I mean, he's going to be phenomenal. So we should know that one in hopefully a couple weeks, and then I'm looking for a lightweight. I'm looking for a lightweight coach, someone who that is not solidified yet. I still have some feelers out there, but I'm looking for a lightweight coach that is still getting on the mat, still, kind of still training a little bit, so he can get in there and scrap with our, Seth and Connor and some of those lightweights that we have. So that's not decided yet, but that is one of my first priorities that I've been kind of working through to get that position filled.
You're going to be living in South Dakota. You have to give us your wrestling Mount Rushmore.
What was that?
You have to give us your wrestling Mount Rushmore now that you're living in South Dakota.
My wrestling Mount Rushmore. Wow. Well, I haven't put too much thought in that. There's a lot of history that you can tap into in this area. I would like, being at South Dakota State University, I mean, we're the only Division I school in the state that has wrestling at this point in time. I want this to be the pinnacle of not only the state, but the area. So, I mean, it would have to be a lot of people that are surrounded by this program and people that I have built relationships with and connections. So, man, that's a tough one, but it would definitely, just to generalize, it would definitely be, people from this area, preferably, some of the past great wrestlers that have wrestled here, at South Dakota State at the Division II level. And then you throw on a guy like Seth Gross. I mean, what not better, faces to be a part of.
All right. We'll table that, but let's play a quick round of the name game. I'm going to give you 5 names, and you're going to tell me what you think about these people or places. You ready to play?
Let's do it.
All right, we'll start with Jay Robinson.
Jay, major reason why I chose the University of Minnesota. He is a phenomenal man. He taught me a lot about, who the type of person you are and the values that he brought not only to our program, but he instilled in a lot of us as athletes. So, phenomenal man.
Marty Morgan.
Marty Morgan. What? There isn't enough time to talk about Marty. He was my guy. When this process was going through, he reached out to me. I spoke and I talked to him a lot through our conversation. And for people that don't know about me and my relationship with my family, my father, he passed away back in 2006, and it was nice and refreshing to get a perspective from a man that I absolutely respect, and that's Marty. And he kind of gave me some clarity and through this process. So words can't express what Marty has done for me, and the relationship that I've been able to have with him and continue to grow. Now getting back to the Midwest, I mean, he's invaluable to me.
Screwy Louis Lazzari.
Really? You went there?
I had to. That's why I put him in 3. I didn't tip my hand too early.
Okay, so man, so I met Louis back in, I don't know, I was wrestling AAU Grand Nationals, and I think it was in Battle Creek, Michigan, and he was wrestling, and we were just kind of playing around on the mat, and he asked, he goes, "Hey, you want to coach me?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." I didn't know who this guy was, and he's out there wrestling and doing his thing. And then he met my parents, and behold, he lives, he from New Jersey. And so I met Louis back in like 91, 92 time frame, and he has never left me alone since. He helped me a lot, when I was younger, and he actually wrestled with me. I was a big kid. When I started wrestling, I was in 2nd grade, and, I was practically 100 pounds in 2nd grade. I was wrestling bantam heavyweight, and, I didn't have a lot of training partners, and, Louis would come in and roll around with me, and he helped me, in areas and positions that, that wasn't being provided. So Louis is a near and dear friend, a family friend. He's part of my family. He'll stay with me weeks upon end, and it's going to be a little different, not being able for him to get into the car and just drive a couple hours to come up to my house. So we'll see. Maybe I'll go home one of these days, and there'll be a car with the license plate Granby Man stuck in my driveway, and he's like, "Hey, I'm here to stay." So we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when it happens.
All right, name number 4, Rob Cole.
Wow, you're really hitting him here. Rob Cole. What can't you say about the man? The past 12 years, he has done everything that he said he would do for me in regards to developing me, preparing me for this day that I take over my program. He will forever be a great friend, and I will, since I've been on the phone with you, he was calling me, we'll forever be friends. He is, in regards to a CEO of college wrestling, you will not find a better leader in the sport of wrestling. He knows what it takes to not only bring in the right people to develop a program, but to run a business. And his mind is absolutely phenomenal. He's going to be an advocate or a resource for me that I'm going to use through this process. And like I told him when I left, Rob, it's been 12 years and I didn't think the day would come. And it was emotional for me, because he has played such a instrumental part in the development of not only me, but the other coaches that he's been a part of. So Rob Cole, amazing. Just an absolute great mentor.
All right, we'll end with this guy, Steve Mocco.
Steve Mocco, wow. That's I didn't think that would be a name, but Steve and I go back. We wrestled when we were kids. His family and my family were good friends, and we trained together when, going through the youth and the high school. And, he ultimately went on, to Blair Academy, and had the success that he's had. And, over time, kind of, relationships kind of, move in different directions. He started out at Iowa, and when he was at Iowa, I was at Minnesota, and, there's a love-hate relationship, with those two teams. And, he was a part of that team. So, me and him didn't really speak too much, but, then he leaves there and he goes to Oklahoma State, another phenomenal program. And, we've been on some national teams together. And, Steve's the type of guy that, when you see him, if you talk to him, in person, on the phone, it's like you pick up where you left off. And it's like, wow, it's been how many years? And it's just like, I wouldn't believe it. So, Steve, awesome guy, we'll forever be friends. And, so, those are some good names you threw out at me.
Hey, we appreciate that. And hey, there's a great connection here. You have Caldwell on your staff. We want you to come to the Dan Gable Celebrity Golf Tournament Friday, June 8th. That's where Caldwell is from. So it seems like a great connection there. So the invitation's there. I'll follow up later about you coming, but appreciate you spending the time here on our program, and all the best at South Dakota State. We'll be watching and cheering for you.
Well, I appreciate it. I enjoyed you guys getting me on here and kind of just talking through some things. So yeah, the future is bright. The future is bright for South Dakota State, and our goal, our vision here is to take this program to the next level, and that's the plan, and we're going to do everything in our power to make that possible.
Congratulations to you. Thanks for coming on the show. For Andy Hamilton, I'm Kyle Klingman. You've been listening to On the Mat.
Show is part of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MatTalkOnline.com.